like branches, twigs or other wood scraps. You can find them in your garden or actually everywhere. Hello and a warm welcome. I'm Franz from Keep It Grün, and today I want to show you how you can take your garden to the next level. With biochar. So what is today all about? First, I'm going to explain to you what biochar is and what it is made from. Then I will tell you what it can do in your garden and why you cannot afford to miss it. As a third and most exciting step, we will make some biochar ourselves, so that after that you are able to produce it directly in your garden. Let's go! You might be asking yourself right now, what is this biochar that he's talking about? It's basically charred organic material, so branches, twigs, sticks or other wood residues as they occur from pruning trees. If those materials are charred in the absence of oxygen, the result is biochar. Now you might be wondering, where do we get enough biomass to produce my own biochar? Well, that's quite simple, because it actually accumulates everywhere. Like here, as dead wood which would otherwise be burned. Or here, old wood from pellets. Or here, as remnants from woodwork. Or here, as remains from hedge cuttings. But of course they have to be dried a little. You see, in virtually every garden, biomass accumulates from which you can create biochar. How is it in your garden? Do you have any sources of biomass that we haven't listed yet? Feel free to write a comment about it. We will talk about how to make the biochar in just a minute. But why is biochar good for your soil? It's quite simple. Biochar has many positive properties for your plants. You can think of it as a carbon battery which stores nutrients and water long-term in the soil and releases them slowly to your plants, for example in long summer droughts. They also provide a habitat for important microorganisms. Those are important because they mineralize the nutrients in the soil so your plants can absorb them. But biochar has a very nice side effect. During its lifetime, a plant absorbs quite some amount of CO2. If we now produce biochar from the leftovers of these plants, then the CO2 is bound in very stable carbon structures. And if we add the biochar to the soil, it can stay there over 1,000 years. Thereby 1 kilogram of biochar equals 3 kilograms of CO2. This means that by creating biochar, you can actively do something against climate change by taking CO2 out of the system and binding it in your soil long term. If you want to know more about biochar, we've linked a very exciting guide article and a podcast episode from us in the video description. Enough with the boring theory, let's talk about something exciting and create our own biochar. For this we need exactly 3 things that actually everybody has at home. Firstly, biomass. Wood cuttings, branches, anything that you have by hand, but it should be at least combustible. Second, we need a metallic vessel or bowl, something where we can make the biochar in. And third, fire. I think we can all handle that. I'll start with gathering some wood and then come back to you guys so we can make the biochar together. Let's go! Now let's move to the actual production of biochar. First, we need a fireproof vessel. I've used a zinc tub like this one here. If you don't have any, you can also just dig a hole in the ground. Then I put some stones underneath the tub, so the lawn remains protected. Next we use our best wood to start a small fire in the bowl. I use remnants from renovation works. Now you can just let it burn and add a little bit of wood until a solid fire base has formed. The goal is to wait until a white layer forms on top of the biochar, which means that the coal is starting to burn to ash. Then we can add another layer of wood and wait until that is charred and starts to turn to ash. We can repeat this step as often as we want, until the bowl is full. Then we can start to extinguish. If you produce biochar this way, you need a lot of patience, because you cannot let the fire unattended for a long time. Otherwise the biochar will burn to ash completely. It's best to use dried or halfly dried wood. If the wood is too wet, you might end up with a lot of smoke. It is also advisable to use similar sized wood pieces, so that you don't end up with some pieces already turning to ash, while others are still uncharred. The same is true for different kinds of wood. A piece of oak wood takes longer to char than a piece of pine, so it's advisable to char similar kinds of wood together.
Also ist es gut, wenn ihr ähnliche Holzarten miteinander verbrennt.
Let's move to the extinguishing of the fire. That is important to stop the biochar from burning to ash. As soon as a white ash layer is created on the top surface, you can extinguish. We used about 20 to 30 liters. You will not catch a point in time when all the wood is charred without risking a high ash content. This method is very simplistic, and you always will end up with some pieces of uncharred wood that you have to sort out in the end. But be sure to have all amber nests extinguished, or you might risk that the biochar enlights itself again or burns your fingers. If you want to try to dry the wet biochar now, then let me tell you, it takes extremely long. This biochar holds water so well that even in a heated room it takes weeks and weeks to dry. So I will just use the wet biochar to make my Terra Preta. I will link a video for you about how to do it. Finally, you should crush the biochar. This increases its surface and allows it to mix well with the soil or compost. Ideally, it should have the size of a grain of rice. Now we have finished biochar, but it's very important to never add plain biochar to the soil. As I explained, biochar acts like a battery for your soil, but you have to charge it beforehand. That means you have to enrich it with nutrients, for example by mixing it with compost. And that's the first step of you creating the famous Terra Preta yourself. Also, it is important to only use untreated wood, because every material that doesn't burn during the charring process stays in the biochar and ends up in your soil. I'm going to get busy chopping up this biochar now. If you like this video, feel free to leave a thumbs up below. If you want to do more in your garden, here's a video on how to build your own vermicompost. And if you never want to miss out a new video, feel free to subscribe. See you next time.